Hi everyone and welcome to part 2 of how to be a standout soccer player. Sorry that it's taken so long. I've actually been out with the flu, so it's been hard for me to really create anything as of late. So in the second part, we are going to go over the rest of what we didn't cover in part 1, which if you remember, we covered how to be a standout player. I think we also covered how to be dangerous, be an impact player, all these other things. So today we're going to be going over the attributes that these players who stand out have, what attributes they have, mental and physical. So this is going to be another really important lesson. Again, this is really only for serious players, but hopefully all of you who are watching this are serious players and are players who want to take their game to the next level, as I definitely want to help you to get to the next level. So this lesson is going to work perfectly with the first lesson. If you haven't seen the first lesson already, a card will come across. You can take a look at it there. You can also take a look at the link in the description. Yes, these are longer videos, but there's a whole bunch of information jam-packed into them, and you really don't want to miss out. So without further ado, let's get into the lesson. Make sure you have a pen and paper ready, or a pencil, or whatever you want, because you will be taking some notes and answering some questions during this lesson. Let's get right into it. All right, everyone, welcome to part 2 of how to be a standout player. Make sure you have a pen and paper ready. Also, it's very important to make sure that while you're answering the questions that on your paper, that you're also answering in the comments down below. This is important so that I can see your answers, so that I can help you, and that so other people in the community can also help you. Also, it's very important to be very, very honest. I'm going to be drinking a lot of water during this because I'm still a little bit sick. All right, on to the first section. We're going to recap what we went over in the last video in part 1. We went over having a positive impact in matches, being a player who can do that, being a player who can go into matches and come away from that match being a player who influenced the game in a positive way. This includes being consistent. You can't really be much of a positive impact player unless you are consistently performing in matches. And this also means you need to be a player that takes risks. This is all stuff we went over in the last one. Next was being unpredictable. We went over doing this. We went over that being unpredictable includes being multifaceted, which is basically not being one-dimensional. We went over you need to have a wide array of moves in order to be unpredictable. We went over why you need to have 3 moves that you've mastered. We also went over how you need to be someone who's good at decision making. But let's get right into the topic of part 2, and the first topic is physical attributes. So these are going to be the physical attributes that standout players usually have. And I say usually because this is not going to be the same for every player. These can vary, but many standout players have the same. Many are the same player to player. So the first thing we need to realize about standout players is they're good at many physical areas. It's not just one area. Remember, unpredictability, that ability to be multifaceted, it's not limited to one area. So like I just said, they're not just good at one area, they have many strengths. Next, I'm not just talking about strength, speed, and things of that nature. I'm also talking about things like technique, the ability with the ball, and things like that. Okay, so first in the physical attributes, we're going over ball control. Now, I say almost all standout players, but I believe all standout players have great ball control. This is a staple among standout players. They can manipulate the ball to do whatever they want. So essentially, if you want to do something with the ball, it's coming your way, a standout player, more times than not, is able to do what they have pictured in their head. This is one of the most fundamental skills in the game. I mean, for those of you who have been following me for a long time, you'll know I harp on about ball control all the time because it is really one of the most fundamental skills in the game. And as you'll see, I say here, it is probably the most foundation skill in all football. And without ball control, you really can't do much else. I mean, if you have poor ball control, which essentially means you have poor touch, It's going to be hard for you to strike a ball cleanly. It's going to be hard for you to have good technique, to pass properly, and do almost anything with the ball, skill moves as well. And again, I apologize for my voice here. I am still a little bit sick. The best players who have ever played, who are world class, have had or currently have world class ball control. And you can think of some of the best in history like Zidane, Cruyff, Maradona, and Pele. And this is just to name a few. You can name a whole, just plethora of players. And if they're ones that have been considered some of the best, I can guarantee they've had, incredible ball control. All right. So number one is ball control. This is where I want you to get your pen and paper out, as we're going to answer a few questions to kind of determine how good yours is. So number one is, do you find yourself taking good touches or bad touches generally? So if I was to play the ball to you with, a good amount of speed, would you have the ability, let's say I play it to you 10 times, are you going to be able to control the ball and make it do what you want the majority of the time or not? And this is in matches and practices. There might be a difference. Some players play better in practices, some in matches. But for now, we're just going to include both. So before moving on to this next question, take a moment to pause the video and do that question. Okay. Do you feel comfortable on the ball? When the ball's at your feet, do you feel comfortable? Or do you have to look down at it the whole time to make sure you're not messing up? So, are you nervous and clumsy, or are you comfortable on the ball? Take a second, pause the video, and go ahead and answer that. Okay, so on a scale from 1 to 10, how good is your ball control? Very simple. And even more important is I want you to explain why this is. So if you put, say, a 6 down, tell me why you think a 6. If you put a 9 down, definitely write down why you think 9. And remember, make sure at the end of this video, you're putting all these answers in the comments below, just because I can answer your questions or I can comment on them and other players can give you advice as well. And again, how do you plan on improving your ball control? So this is in general, what are you planning on doing? So are you going to start kicking against the wall every single day? Are you going to do deliberate ball control drills? How do you plan on improving it? Remember, we want to start making a game plan that's going to help you improve. You're going to get all the information you need in these 2 videos, but it's no good sitting on that information. You need to then use that information and make a plan around it and then implement that plan. So what training practices, etc. will you do? Okay, so take a moment to answer that one as well. And then I'm going to move on. Just pause the video because I'm going to be moving on right away. Okay, so the next section on physical attributes is technique. And this one's very important because it ties into a lot of things. So most standout players have absolutely fantastic technique. There's very few that I know or have known or have watched that have poor technique. In fact, I can't think of one. They can strike a ball cleanly and accurately. And I'm not only talking about shooting, of course I am including shooting, but I'm talking about passing, I'm talking about volleying, I'm talking about really any time that they strike a ball in any way. They can do it very cleanly and accurately because of their technique. And having good technique allows players to do more generally. It allows you to be more creative because you can pass in more ways. You can shoot in more ways. You can combine in more ways because you have the technique that opens up so many more doors and so many more options. And like I said, this gives them more options so that they can actually do more. So we're getting right into the technique questions. This one's going to be more slides, but a little bit quicker this time, guys. So first question is, when you pass a ball, does it generally go where you want it to go? So pretty simple. Does it hit your target? So when you pass, I'm not just talking about simple 5-yard passes. I'm talking about most passes in general. When you aim for a pass, do you get it there? Are you accurate? So take a second to answer that. Pause the video and we'll move on to the next one. Next question is, can you shoot accurately? So do you hit the target or are you missing the target often? When you try and curl one into the corner, do you get it? Do you go close or do you miss by miles? So do you shoot accurately? Answer that question and then pause the video. Well, pause the video, then answer that question, and we'll move on to the next one. Next is, can you pass in many different ways accurately? So this includes things like the outside of your foot, the inside of your foot, obviously with the instep, your laces. Can you get under the ball and put backspin on it? Can you do long passes accurately, etc.? So how good are you with the different techniques of passing? And some of these can be applied to shooting as well. So go ahead and pause and answer that one. Okay, and on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you rate your technique? And again, tell me why you rate it. So if it's a 7, why? If it's an 8, why? If it's a 2, why? Okay, so pause the video, go ahead and answer that, and we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so here's a few other areas or physical areas that standout players possess. The first one I want to go over is they use effective skills generally over fancy. And a way I found that this works very well is to choose 3 effective moves that you want to master. And that should come up too. And master them. So for me, again, it's a step over, body feint, and Cruyff. And of course, I know other moves. I can do some fancy moves, but fancy moves are okay so long as they're fancy, effective moves. An example might be the Elastico. It's considered a rather fancy move, but it's also an effective move. The Maradona is a fancy-ish looking move, but it's also an effective move, okay? So as long as it's effective, it's fine. But I don't want to see you doing rainbows over players because that's not what you should be focusing on, right? So choose 3 effective ones. But this is definitely an area standout players are good at. Here is one I really want to emphasize, and it's they do the simple things expertly. This kind of, again, goes over effective over fancy. You look at some players, I think I have it here, think someone like Zidane. He wasn't exactly the most fancy player. He just did the simple things so well that it seemed like he was. It was like an art form. You know, he was one of my favorite players to watch. He's still one of my favorite players to study because he did things so gracefully, but he wasn't really doing anything out of the ordinary. He wasn't doing anything super fancy. He just saw things other players didn't. He played simple passes that other people didn't think of. He made like keeping the ball look so easy. He made getting rid of the ball to a teammate look so easy. So these standout players can do these simple things that maybe a lot of other players struggle with expertly. They can do them so well. So I've always seen it with standout players. They do the simple things effortlessly and expertly. So if you want to become a standout player, you need to get good at the simple things. So there you go. And again, with Zidane, he did the simple things so well that it was almost like an art form. It was so good. So become someone who is always good with their passes, is really accurate with their passes. Be someone who sees everything and can play in the good passes. Be someone who never really loses the ball. Be someone who, you know, can beat someone with one of those effective moves. Do the simple things expertly. And when you do the simple things in every area expertly, it comes together to form a player like Zidane. Next is, are you in great shape? Because standout players are. They're in great shape, and it's hard to be a standout player when you're not, because if you're not in great shape, you're not going to be on the pitch. You can't possibly stand out if you're not in great shape. All right, so these are, I don't think there's another one. These are just a couple of other physical areas that you want to be making sure you're covering. As you can tell, I really put a lot of emphasis on ball control. And what was the other one I did? And I put a lot of emphasis on technique, because those are 2 areas that you really need to get a handle on when it comes to the physical things that standout players have. Those are 2 areas that take a lot of practice, but you can also focus on them at the same time, but we'll get into that a little later. Okay, so let's go over the questions for this. First one's very simple. Do you have 3 moves mastered? Okay, do you have 3 moves mastered? And if you do, what are they? Okay, so pause the video, write down what they are, and then move on. And if you don't pick 3, and make sure you're working on them. Next is, do you do the simple things well? So how is your passing? Can you control the ball effectively? How is your movement? Do you do the simple things well? I'm not asking you to do fancy things. I'm asking you if you do those simple things well. Do you pass accurately? Can you find space? Can you control a pass that comes to you? Can you switch direction easily? Okay, so think of your game and do you do those simple things well? Go ahead and pause and answer that one. Next is, how is your fitness on a scale of 1 to 10? This is an area that trips up a lot of players. In fact, it trips me up all the time because I tend to get out of shape very quickly. So I understand the struggle, but how is your fitness on a scale of 1 to 10? Make sure you're being honest with these questions as well, guys. Are you in shape or are you out of shape? Very simple. You'll know if you are. So go ahead and pause and answer that one as well. And when you're answering that, make sure you're also going over how are you going to get into better shape if you're not in such great shape right now. And if you are, keep doing what you're doing. All right, we're on to the mental attributes. I actually have no idea how much time has passed because I forgot to set the timer. About 15 minutes. Okay, so I'm trying to keep this one. I don't want this one to be super long just because I know the last video went about 40 minutes. But we'll make sure we get everything hit. Okay, so mental attributes. Like I alluded to last time, this is a very important area, so make sure you really pay attention during this area. This is the area most players skip. This is the area that most players feel isn't as important because it doesn't usually involve a ball at their feet and it doesn't usually involve some physical component of the sport. But that's the undoing of so many players because the mental side of the game is probably the most important side. And you'll see why in a moment. So first thing is obviously the mental attributes that a standout player usually have. Read that wrong for a second. So again, this will not be the same for every single standout player. We're all individuals, we're all unique, we all function in different ways. But you'll find that many players who were at the top of the game share many of these traits. I mean, you can look at players who hated each other even. You can look at like Patrick Vieira and Roy Keane, two players who loathed each other, yet had very similar traits when it came to mentality. So the first thing about standout players, they have a mental toughness. And what this means is they have deliberately worked on becoming mentally tough to allow things not to faze them, to allow themselves to bounce back from adversity. And we're going to go more into this in a sec, so don't worry. So they have belief systems and mindsets in place that help them and don't hinder them. And the problem usually with most players is this area right here, is they don't have the belief systems in place that are helping them, but in place of where those belief systems should be, they have belief systems and mindsets that actually hurt them, that keep them down, that prevent them from growing. And standout players have deliberately developed these, and they make sure they only have ones that assist them. Again, another popular misconception when it comes to mental attributes is that you either have it or you either don't. So if you take confidence, for example, players usually think, well, you're either a confident person or you're not. Like anything, it is developed, it's practiced, and top players deliberately develop the attributes that they want. Okay, so let's go over the attributes. Number one, and this is an important one as I take a drink of water, is that they are learners. So what's this mean? It just means they are constantly learning. They are seeking out information. Someone who is a standout player didn't get there by never learning anything new or just sitting on their old beliefs. They recognize that in order to get better, they have to adapt and evolve, as other players around them do as well. Another big one is they never feel they are above learning. You'll get players every now and then, or not now and then, you'll get many players, and probably the majority of players, who feel they are above having to learn something or feel that they are above having to listen to coaches. And I fell into this trap when I was younger, and it hurts you. It hurts you from becoming a better player. They know that there is always more to be learned. They realize that they can't possibly know it all. I think a famous story I heard was one of Michael Jordan, who was the best basketball player of all time, according to some, or it's kind of widely known or believed he was. And one of the things that his coaches used to say about him, which I always thought was very telling about the kind of guy he was that Michael Jordan was the most coachable player they had ever had under them. And what that means is he was someone who was willing to learn. He knew that he could grow and learn more always. And so he would learn from his coaches. He'd go out and seek new information. He'd learn from any source that he could. Now, he was probably very selective about the information because, I mean, there's so much information out there that you can't possibly allow all of it in. But he went out there and made sure he found the right sources. And he was always committed to learning. And because of it, he became, what? The best basketball player in the world. And of course, there's more to it than just that. But this was a huge contributor. Because if he hadn't learned what he did, he may not have become the player that he became. So sorry if there was a bit of a weird transition there. I had to pause and stop recording for a while, but we're back into it. So let me see where we are. So we're on learners, which is one of the mental attributes, and we're going over how it's incredibly important to be a learner, because standout players never feel they are above learning. And I think I used the Michael Jordan analogy to kind of prove that. Recognize that even pros review footage. In fact, they probably do it more than you and I. A lot of stuff like that goes into the modern game, and they're not only learning from their coaches behind the scenes on the training ground all the time. You can take a look at certain players who have been transferred to different teams and have said that, ever since this coach, I've been playing under this coach, I've learned so much. So even the best of the best players are still learning a ton of things, which means you, as someone who is not currently a professional player or you're a younger player, need to be learning as much as you can. So make sure you're doing that. And you can find that in a lot of players' biographies, autobiographies, where they attribute, a period in their career where they learned so much and it helped them become the player that they became eventually and continued to keep learning after that. So make sure you know that pros do this as well. Next thing about learners is they're never satisfied with where they are. They don't want to be left behind by other players. They want to be at the top of that learning curve. They want to be the one that's learning more than the next pro or the next player or whatever. They're not satisfied with where they are, which means that even if they are learning a lot, they're not satisfied with that position. They want to keep moving ahead, okay? So, learners' questions. So, first and foremost is, do you consider yourself a learner right now? Remember to be honest, and if yes, why? If no, also put down why you think that. So I'll give you a second to answer this. Just pause the video. Next is, how often do you watch matches and study them? And this includes highlights, compilations, etc. Really anything where you actually did analysis. I'm not talking about watching matches and just watching it for fun, which is fine. I'm talking about watching matches and actually analyzing the matches. You're taking note of the tactics being used. You're taking note of why certain substitutions are being made. You're taking note of why certain players are doing certain things. You're taking note of the mistakes. You're taking note of the successes. That's truly analyzing a match. You can see things playing out before they even happen. All right? That's what I mean. So how often do you do that? Make sure you pause the video. Next is, how are you going to make sure you learn more? Because you may be at a point where you've learned quite a bit, but it's about continuing to grow. So what will you watch? What will you study, etc.? I mean, you're already watching, I understand you're already watching this video, and that's an incredibly good step, because this is going to be another pretty long video that's going to teach you quite a bit of information. If you watched part 1, you probably learned a lot from that too. So keep watching videos like this one. If I release them in the future or on other channels, I'm sure there are other channels that do, if not similar videos to this, something like this. So make sure you're watching and studying that. Consume this information and use it. Make sure you're watching the matches. But how are you personally going to make sure you continue to learn? All right, just pause the video and answer that one. I'm going to take a sip of tea. Okay. Next in the mental attributes is confidence, and this is one that probably a lot of you have asked me about, or not probably, you have asked me about, and a lot of you seem to have affected you. So Standout players are confident in their ability. It's very hard to be a standout, consistent player who isn't confident. They have tremendous self-belief. We have to draw a line between what confidence and arrogance is. They're usually calm and composed in pressure situations. They don't panic under pressure. Now, this could mean like just a big game. This could mean just playing in matches in general, because I know a lot of you struggle to replicate the form you have in practices into matches. Confident standout players are able to do that. They're able to stay calm and composed even in pressure situations, whether they're playing in the middle of the park, whether they're being pressured by opponents, whether they're just in a situation that calls for them to be calm. They're able to do that. Next is they know they can bounce back from their mistakes. They are aware that mistakes happen and they know how to bounce back from them, because one of the biggest problems that players who lack self-belief and lack confidence, and this was one of my issues when I was a younger player, is they let mistakes happen, or they don't, it's not that they let them happen, but they do happen, and then they beat themselves up about them, right? Now, there are certain things you definitely should not let go right away. Like if you make a huge mistake, you should address it. You should practice certain things to make sure you don't make that mistake again. But that's dealing with the mistake. That's not beating yourself up. That's dealing with it. And that's what standout players do. They don't take a mistake and then let it linger. They don't allow it to then affect the rest of their game. They then up their game in order to bounce back. So that's what you need to get used to doing. If you make a mistake, you need to realize mistakes happen. I know we live in a culture, or at least most of us live in a culture, where mistakes are like looked down upon, but it shouldn't be the case, because we're human. You're going to make mistakes. The best players in the world make mistakes. Messi makes mistakes. Ronaldo makes mistakes. Pele made mistakes. Maradona made mistakes. Cruyff made mistakes. They all make mistakes, and you will as well. It's not about whether or not you will make mistakes. It's about how you bounce back from those mistakes. Okay? So, although confident, these standout players know that they can keep growing, and we kind of touched upon this briefly in the learner section. They aren't arrogant. They know they can keep getting better and better. And that's the big thing, is you want to make sure you're not getting into that realm of arrogance, but you're staying within confidence. And arrogance comes from basically thinking you know it all, that you can't keep getting better, that, you just, without reason, for some reason that you're good, but you don't have a reason for it. You're just that person who has that belief that they're good, but nothing to back it up. And it's a very dangerous territory to get into. It's as dangerous as being extremely unconfident, because your arrogance will come back to bite you. So you don't want to be arrogant, you want to be confident. There's a huge difference between having a tremendous self-belief in your ability and your ability to perform, and being arrogant. So make sure you learn the difference between the two, and that you strive for confidence, not arrogance. Okay, so confident questions. First one's pretty simple. Do you consider yourself a confident player? And I just put that in there to make sure you're being honest. Is be honest. And when I say be honest, I mean if you are a confident player, be honest. A lot of players seem to think that admitting that you have confidence in your ability is arrogant. It's not. Being confident in your ability is not arrogant. You can have self-belief in yourself. There's a difference. So be honest. And if you're someone who doesn't have confidence in your ability, be honest as well. Remember, the more honest you are with these answers, the better you can come at them and actually improve them and fix these areas of your game. Okay, so take a moment, pause the video, and answer that one. Next is, are you calm in pressure situations? This is a big one. Do you panic, or are you calm in pressure situations? So think of times when you were put under pressure. Maybe you had to take a penalty. Maybe you were just put in a match, a big pressure match. How did you handle it? Were you able to rise to the occasion and just be calm and collected? Maybe you made some mistakes, but you bounced back from those mistakes. Or did you panic, and did that affect your game? So pause the video and answer that one. Next one is, do you bounce back from your mistakes well? Or do you beat yourself up over your mistakes? So go ahead and answer that one. Pause the video. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you in your ability? And this is an important one. Answer why is it that number? So like we've been doing, why is it 7? Why is it 2? Why is it 9? Whatever it may be. Tell me why, or tell yourself why, really. Remember, be brutally honest with yourself here. Okay, positive mentalities and beliefs. This is another really important part because your belief system is going to be what drives you. And all standout players have, or most have, strong mentalities and beliefs. Again, standout players, they understand the importance of having strong mentalities and beliefs. Now, number one, I think it's important, you can already see it on the screen, is they don't give up. These people who are standout players, they're persistent. They don't give up when things get hard. So even in hard times, they don't quit. They don't give up. They keep moving forward. They have, again, this belief in themselves that they can get through it no matter what. And it drives them past the hard times. It drives them to get better even when things look bleak, right? I mean, you can look at some of the Cinderella stories. You can look at like a Jamie Vardy type story who he wasn't even really a professional. He was until like 24, 25. He was a pro, but he was in like the lower leagues. He was making like 30 quid a week, which is not much, not enough to live on. And he worked hard, and by the time he was 29, he was a Premier League champion. That's a huge, great example of someone who never gave up and had belief in their ability to make it to the top. Next is they have a positive mindset. What's this mean? They look ahead, not backwards, I put here. And what I mean is they don't look at the failures of their past unless it's to assess them and not make the same mistakes twice. But they don't let their emotions of those mistakes and failures settle in and affect them now. They're always looking forward. They're always looking at right now or looking ahead. They have a positive mindset when it comes to those kind of things. They set goals, which we'll get into in a second. They have mindsets that they know are going to push them towards their goals. Which, okay, I know next is they have a winning mentality. You need to have that winning mentality, even if you find yourself on a team that's a losing team. You need to have a winning mentality. You need to go into every game believing you can win it, even if it's incredibly unrealistic. I can give you an example from my life. We went into a championship game for my college against the team that was basically the number one team in the nation. But I went into that game believing we could win it. And there was a point in that game when it looked like we could have. Now, we ended up losing quite comprehensively. I think it was 4-1. But there was a period in the game when the team actually believed that they could win it, and it was our best spell in the game. You need to have a winning mentality no matter how the odds are stacked against you. You look at stories like Leicester. You look at Wales at the Euros. You look at Iceland at the Euros. You got to have that winning mentality. And again, they don't even think about losing, right? There's going to be a result at the end of the game either way. But if you think you're going to lose before the game has even started, how do you think your performance is going to be? It's probably not going to be a good one. But if you think and believe that you can win, you're going to start fighting for every 50-50. You're going to start bringing your A game. You're going to start doing good. You're going to have a clear mind. Where if you think about losing, you're not going to have that drive. Okay? So let's go into mindset belief questions. So right now I want you to think about the mindsets or beliefs that you currently have about your ability, about how good you are, these kind of things. Maybe even things in general. This doesn't have to just be soccer. Because a lot of the belief systems you have in place in general will kind of affect your soccer ability as well. So what do you have now? And list them all down. Just list all of them, okay? So you can pause the video and go ahead and do that. Next, what beliefs do you have that hold you back? Are you not confident? Are you got poor self-esteem? Do you not take many risks maybe? Do you not have a winning mentality? What is holding you back? Again, list them down. What is preventing you from reaching your potential? And usually the thing about this is we usually know what it is, and yet we usually do nothing about it. Sometimes we don't, so I want you to think about this. What is it that's preventing you from reaching your potential? So go ahead and pause the video. Next is what are you going to do in order to get rid of those bad beliefs? So make a bit of a game plan on this. Now that you know what your bad beliefs are and the ones you don't want, how are you going to combat them? How are you going to fight them? How are you going to get rid of them? Okay? Next is what good beliefs would you like to add to your life? And what are you going to start doing in order to develop them? So think of the beliefs you do want. Do you want leadership? Do you want confidence? Do you want these kind of things? List those beliefs now. Okay. Next is great work ethic, and I'll describe exactly what I mean by this. So standout players have great work ethic. You can't really move around this, and there's a reason, there's a correlation, and this is outside of soccer, but there's a correlation between successful people, and it's that they all seem to have incredibly good work ethic. And it's the same with standout players. They all have great work ethic, not only on the pitch, but off the pitch as well. And that's what I'm saying here. When I say work ethic, I don't mean just the physical act of working hard, like running all over the pitch. Think of like a Luis Suarez type player who's constantly in motion. I'm not just talking about that, although that's very important as well. But I'm talking about their work ethic in creating new habits, mindsets, things of this nature. I'm talking about how much they do behind the scenes, the research they do, the hard work they do in order to improve their game behind the scenes. They're relentless. They're obsessed with improving themselves. And again, to kind of emphasize that, they do everything they can to succeed. They leave no stone unturned. So this could be whether it's learning a new technique that's going to improve their goal scoring. This could be whether it's simply learning how to mark a man better movement. It could be doing what you're doing right now, watching a video like this in order to learn more that's going to help your game. But they do everything they can. They make sure there's no excuses. They make sure there's no regrets. Most of the time they are leaders. Now, I think we touched upon this before in the last video, and to be fair, not every standout player is a leader in the sense of captain. They're not always captains, but they lead through example. For example, Luis Suarez is not a captain of Barcelona. He was not the captain of Liverpool. I think actually he might have been the captain at Ajax for a little bit. But one thing Suarez does do is he leads through example on the pitch. He works his ass off, right? You see Luis Suarez just kind of running all the time, and it makes you want to as well. You see Luis Suarez battling, same thing. And you could take a look at other standout players or great captains who had this, or players who weren't even captains, but they were leaders. Leaders do not always need to be the guy that's screaming on the pitch. Sure, that's an organizer. You need someone that organizes everyone if nobody else will step up. But a true leader is someone who leads through example, right? So, again, this is one of the areas that not every standout player is. There are quiet geniuses, for example, on the pitch. There are players who are not really leaders, but are standout players. However, it doesn't hurt to be a leader as well and lead through example. And if you're doing everything that we're going over, you can't help but lead through example. And next is they leave everything on the pitch. If you're a standout player, they leave the pitch knowing they gave it everything, even if they had a bad game. They know they did everything they possibly could to influence the game in their team's favor. And, a lot of players don't do this. A lot of players will give up. A lot of players will not put in that tackle they need to put in. A lot of players will not put in that block. They'll not make that run, even though they might not get the ball. They won't do those things. But a standout player will do those things. They leave the pitch with no regrets. And there it is, no regrets. They leave the pitch every single time knowing, or at least most times, the majority of the time, I'm sure there's an off game every now and then, but the majority of the time they leave the pitch with no regrets at all. Maybe they missed a chance or something, but they knew that they gave everything they have. So let's get into the work ethic questions. Now the first one's simple. Do you have great work ethic? Be honest with yourself. If so, why do you think this? Okay, so pause the video and answer that. Next is, do you feel like you've given everything when you walk off the pitch? Generally. So in general, do you feel like you've given everything you have to give when you walk off the pitch? So go ahead and pause. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how good is your work ethic? And go ahead and pause and answer that. And again, make sure you answer why it is that number. Okay, so in the last video, we did basically like a little kind of outline on how you can actually improve the areas we went over. So we're going to do that on this one as well. So let's start with the physical attributes. So we're going to identify the areas, or the first thing you need to be doing is identifying the areas you need help with most. Now, you've already written things down, so you should have a good idea of this. So look at the notes you have taken and answers to the questions you've answered. And this should tell you what areas you need to work on the most. There should be a pattern, there should be a trend, and it should be telling you, it should be glaring right at you. Sometimes it's not, sometimes you have to dig a little deeper. That's fine. But it should be, sometimes to some of you, it should be pretty obvious right away what areas you need to work on. So here's just a regular thing you can do. And it's something I recommend all the time, is kick against the wall. This is a fantastic way to improve your ball control and your technique. And this is one that many of you may, kind of turn away from. But it is an absolutely fantastic way. And this is why. The wall is the perfect partner for many of these drills. It is a great way to improve your ball control. You have to control the ball every time it comes back to you. And this can be in a controlled way too. This could be in a deliberate way. You could do certain ball control drills, some of which I have on the channel. I have a 10-minute routine you can do to improve your ball control every day. That's one thing you can do. You can improve your technique because you can shoot, pass, and practice any kind of shooting or passing technique that you want against a wall. A lot of people ask me, like, how do you improve? Do you have passing drills, or do you have like long passing drills? My simple answer will always be, use a wall. Not only is it great because you always get the ball back, but you have to control the ball when you bring it down. You don't lose your ball, right? So the ball always comes back to you. It saves time. You can get more reps in. So if you're not already implementing kicking against the wall into your routine, really consider doing it. Having a partner works as well, but if you don't have a partner and you need a way to get better at these areas, start kicking against the wall, start controlling the ball against the wall, start shooting against the wall, working on your technique. Start using the inside and the outside and the top of your foot for all these things to improve your technique. The way to improve these areas is repetition and consistency. And if you go to a wall every single day and practice these things, you will see improvements. Next is watch players that have mastered the simple aspects of the game. We went over how important it is, or we went over briefly how important it is to be a master at the simple things. One player I used to watch was Zidane. He was known for being someone who was a master at the basics, right? He mastered the basics, and it was beautiful to watch. He was in such great control of the ball. He could pass the ball accurately. He could do all these things. So if you want a player to maybe even emulate, Zidane is a great player to take a look at. Next, come up with a workout plan. If you're out of shape, you need to come up with a plan to combat that. Creating an eaten without a G schedule wouldn't hurt as well. So that's supposed to be eating. Honestly, if you're not someone who schedules, like has workout plans and workout schedules and things like that, it's something you need to get on top of, because I think it's been proven that if we have things written down and we write things down that we're supposed to do on a certain date, it's more likely that we'll do them. So come up with a workout plan that you know you can do. Make sure you do it at times you know you can do them. And just after that, it's following through. That's it. So we'll go over coming up with a game plan and workout plan in a second. Next is be consistent. And this is one that I talk about all the time on the channel. None of this stuff that we've gone over in this video, the previous video, or any of the videos I've ever done will work or make a difference if you're not consistent with it at all. The players who come to my videos and tell me that this doesn't work or this doesn't work always make me laugh, because I know they've gone out and tried it twice, maybe not even, and because they can't do it, assume it doesn't help. It's not how things work. You have to be consistent. You have to do something consistently to see results in any way. It doesn't work to do something just once and expect massive results. Life doesn't work that way in any area at all, especially in a sport like soccer. Which means if you want to get good at your shooting, guess what you have to do? You have to practice the right things consistently. If you want to get good at your skill moves, you got to practice them consistently. And we get frustrated when we don't see immediate results, because unfortunately, in today's day and age, we've been taught to expect immediate results for some reason. But that's not the case. You need to work hard and be consistent. So make sure you're being consistent when you make your plan, when you make your game plan. Stick to it, or else it won't yield you any results. And that's exactly what this is saying. You won't master the moves, you won't improve your ball control, your technique will still stay the same, etc., if you're not consistent. All right, so continuing over to the mental and basically belief systems and everything. Again, you need to identify what you struggle with most. Like I said, this is an area often skipped by players, the mental side. You need to practice the mental side just like you need to practice the physical side. The mental side's not something that's just going to fix itself. It's something you need to consciously work at. So make sure you check your notes and make sure you take note of what is it you seem to struggle with the most. Take a look. List the areas you want to improve and which ones you want to get rid of. So what beliefs and mentalities do you want to keep and develop, and which ones do you want to get rid of? List them down. That way you can actually visually see what it is you want, right? So now you know what it is you want. Now you can work towards creating a plan to get that. Now here's a big one. Pick a player you really look up to. So I want you to pick a player that has all the attributes that you want and start emulating them. So imagine what it would be like to play like them. So if you want to say be confident and you want to have good foot skills and you want to do all this stuff, look for a player that matches that description and start emulating them. That's a great place to start if you want to start developing some of these things. Plan on learning more every single day. Be dedicated to learning more all the time. Whether that means watching my videos or other people's videos, whether that means watching more matches and highlights and analyzing them. Find a way to keep improving the mental muscle, not just the physical muscle. Create lasting habits. Now, habit creation is a difficult thing, but it's a necessary thing if you want to improve. So your beliefs and habits are also linked. So you need to start creating healthy habits. These are things that are linked. Like if your belief systems actually are habits as well, habits of thought. You start believing something when you start thinking it enough over and over again. So start creating healthy habits. And a thing about habits is the more healthy habits you have, the more you'll create. The more unhealthy habits you have, the more of those you'll create. So just start small. Start with something like you're going to wake up early every morning, or you're going to eat healthy, or you could even do something like, you could do meditation if you want. But start creating healthy habits. To relate it back to soccer, maybe just do, after I wake up, I'm going to practice soccer for 10 minutes. That's a simple one. Do a morning routine. Do a morning soccer routine. Do the ball control routine. That's what I do every morning. That's a great way to start creating some good, lasting habits that are going to benefit you. Figure out what motivates you. Figure out what motivates you and surround yourself with it. Right? There are certain videos that motivate me. There are certain people that motivate me. There are certain goals that motivate me. Right? So I make sure those kind of things are surrounding me, so that whenever I'm feeling a lack of motivation, within my reach is something that's going to put me back on track. Whether it's a certain book that motivates me when I read it, whether it's a certain song that I play, whether it's a certain goal I have that I have to get out of the drawer and open a notebook to look at. Right? Then you stop forgetting why you're unmotivated. You start realizing this is why I'm doing this. So figure out what motivates you. And speaking of goals, have them. Make sure you have them. You know, we spoke about having a goal journal in the last video, so you can definitely go back and watch that. I'm not going to explain it again here, but have a goal journal, have goals, have things you're moving towards. Because if you don't, you're going to be lost. You're going to be kind of just moving around randomly, not certain of which direction you're supposed to be going. So have goals. All right, so your game plan. This is the big one. So in the last video, I told you kind of to make like a mini game plan of the two things we went over, and now we've gone over the other two things. So you should kind of have almost like a full game plan starting to form. The kind of practices you should be working on, the kind of mental stuff you should be looking at, right? So now we're trying to bring this all together. Now first realize I can't create a game plan for you. It doesn't work that way. It's different per person. I can tell you things like what I do, But that's it. You don't want to just copy exactly what I do. I mean, maybe you do. I take bits and pieces from a lot of people. But, you know, your life is different than mine. Your body's different than mine. So your game plan is going to be different. And again, this will vary from person to person. So take what you have already written down and use the answers to those questions from both videos to become aware of what you need to work on. Look, what these videos have done is they've made you aware of what your strengths are, and they've made you aware of what your weaknesses are. That's huge, because now that you're aware of those things, you can take those moving forward and work on them. Develop a training schedule. So what needs the most work? Start creating schedules around it. It's really that simple. Start small. Start creating the habit of training. So if ball control is an area that you've identified as this trouble area, do what I said earlier. Go to a wall for maybe 20 minutes a day and do certain drills. Look at some drills on this channel or other channels and start making a schedule around it. Right? This is very important. And don't think that, and just when you make the schedule, just make it. Don't even worry about it. Just go all the way through the thing and make it. You can change it later, but just make sure you get to the end. The amount of times I've changed schedules is just so many times I can't even remember. Even the one I have now, I'm even looking at and I'm like, I probably should change that a bit. There will be times when you need to change it based on how you're developing. So don't worry about that. Just focus on getting one created. And guys, make sure you refer to your notes and this video often. You know, it's not enough to just watch this video once and then go off. Or watch this video once, take notes, and then go off. Because then if you watch this video once, put the notes away and never look at them again, you're going to forget everything. And on those notes and in this video is basically a lot of things that are going to help you improve if you keep them in your mind. So don't just stash them away. Don't just watch this video once. I mean, watch this video multiple times if you need to. You really want to drill this stuff into your head. So again, constantly refer to this video, the first video, remember this is 2 parts, and your notes, okay? Keep this on your mind. All right, guys, I want to thank you for watching the video. You know, remember now it's up to you to implement this information. This has been a lot of information thrown right at you, and I understand that, and it's a lot to take in, but that's why I had you write stuff down. And again, this video isn't going anywhere, so you can always refer to it in the future if you need to go back over it. That's absolutely fine. In fact, I would encourage that with a lot of videos I like that I think have taught me many things. I've gone through them multiple times. So, you know, there's no shame in not having remembered everything the first time through. You probably won't. So, again, thank you for watching. I know this has been a long thing. Hopefully, the information in this is going to be sufficient enough to help you improve as a player and get to that next level. Remember to make sure you check out part 1 if you haven't already. If you haven't, this may have not made much sense, so I'm assuming you have. But if you haven't, you definitely want to check out part 1. It's kind of important with as it ties into this one. All right, guys, so seriously, I want to emphasize that it's up to you now. You know, you have the info, you have the awareness, which if you didn't have that before, it's huge. Being aware of your strengths and weaknesses and what you need to work on and being honest with yourself about them is so important. Remember, if you're not being honest with these questions, you're not going to help yourself, because then you won't know where you need to go, where you need to improve and all that. All right, guys, so thanks again for watching. You can take a look at part 1. It should be down there somewhere. And there's another video that I highly recommend you check out. Also, if you're new to Simplysoccer, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because as you know, we release a bunch of videos every week. I didn't release many or any this week because I was sick, but that's not normal. I don't usually get sick. So, you know, that happens. Guys, make sure you like this video and share this video as well. I spent a lot of time on this video. It took a lot of work, but I did it because I want to make sure you guys are improving and learning and moving forward. But I would very much appreciate you liking the video and sharing it. All right, guys, my voice is completely shot. Again, I'm still doing this while sick. So I'm going to give my voice a nice little break. Guys, please look over your notes. Really heed the advice. And I really hope that this information is helping you or will help you to to become a better player. All right, guys, until the next video, I'll talk to you later.